The female CEO fired Daniel before he could even finish explaining why he needed his bonus. He stood outside the executive office with his termination letter trembling in his hand, his last paycheck already spent in his mind on rent, groceries, and his 8-year-old daughter's medicine. He had given the company 7 years of his life, stayed late when others went home, covered shifts when people called in sick, and never complained about being a single father. But that morning, none of it seemed to matter. The CEO had looked at his performance report, cut his annual bonus, and then fired him for refusing to accept an impossible workload. Daniel walked toward the elevator with his head lowered, trying to figure out how he would tell his little girl that daddy might not have a job anymore. Then, just before he reached the elevator doors, a voice behind him stopped him. It was the company's biggest rival. And the words she spoke changed everything. If you believe kindness can give someone a second chance when the world has already given up on them, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to SoulTales for more emotional stories about kindness, courage, and second chances. Daniel had never expected his life to become so fragile. 5 years earlier, he had been married, working a stable job, and planning a future with his wife. But after she passed away unexpectedly, everything changed. Their daughter, Lily, became his entire world. Daniel learned how to braid her hair, pack her lunches, attend parent meetings, and work 12-hour shifts without letting anyone see how exhausted he was. Every morning, he left home before sunrise, kissed Lily on the forehead, and promised he would be back before she went to sleep. Sometimes he kept that promise. Sometimes work made it impossible. But Lily never complained. She simply waited for him with a small plate of reheated dinner on the kitchen table. Daniel worked for a major technology company owned by a powerful female CEO named Victoria Hale. Victoria was brilliant, disciplined, and feared throughout the corporate world. Under her leadership, the company had grown rapidly, but success had made her impatient. Employees were expected to produce perfect results under impossible deadlines. Daniel had always managed to survive that pressure because he believed hard work would eventually be recognized. That year, he had led one of the company's most important projects, staying late for weeks to make sure everything was delivered on time. His team had praised him, and his manager had recommended him for a substantial performance bonus. Daniel was counting on that bonus. Lily needed a medical procedure that was not life-threatening but was important enough that he could not postpone it forever. He had already saved nearly everything he could, but the final amount depended on that bonus. When Victoria called him into her office, Daniel thought she was finally going to recognize his work. Instead, she told him the company had decided to reduce his bonus because of budget restructuring. Daniel calmly explained that his workload had doubled while his team had been reduced. He did not demand anything. He simply asked her to reconsider. Victoria saw his request as weakness. She told him that personal circumstances could not dictate business decisions. Daniel nodded quietly and accepted her answer, but when she ordered him to take responsibility for another failing department without additional support, he finally said he could not do it without risking the quality of the entire project. Victoria became cold. Within minutes, the conversation turned from a bonus dispute into a termination. Daniel walked out carrying a small cardboard box containing a framed photograph of Lily, an old coffee mug, and a handwritten note from his team. He passed dozens of employees who suddenly became uncomfortable when they saw him. Some looked away. Others whispered. Daniel tried to keep his expression calm, but inside, he felt as if 7 years of his life had just been erased. He pressed the elevator button and stared at the glowing numbers above the doors. He was already imagining Lily asking him whether they could still afford her medicine. His throat tightened. He took a slow breath and promised himself that he would not cry until he reached his car. Then a woman's voice came from behind him. It was Evelyn Carter, the CEO of Hailteca's biggest competitor. Evelyn had been visiting the building for a partnership meeting that had ended badly. She had witnessed Daniel leaving Victoria's office. She had also noticed something Victoria apparently had not. Every employee in the hallway had looked at Daniel with respect. Evelyn walked toward him and asked if he was Daniel Brooks. He nodded, confused. She told him that she had heard his presentation during an industry conference months earlier. She remembered how he had solved a problem that several senior executives had failed to understand. She had quietly followed his career ever since. Daniel assumed she was being polite. He thanked her and turned back toward the elevator. Then Evelyn offered him a job. Not a temporary position. Not a sympathy offer. She offered him a senior operations role with a higher salary than he had ever earned, full benefits, flexible hours, and a signing bonus large enough to cover Lily's medical procedure. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. For years, he had wondered whether anyone noticed how hard he worked. Standing there in the hallway, holding the box containing his entire office life, he finally realized someone had. But Evelyn had one condition. She told him she did not want him because she felt sorry for him. She wanted him because she believed he was one of the most capable people in the industry. She had seen how he protected his team, solved problems under pressure, and kept working despite personal hardship. She wanted those qualities inside her company. Daniel nearly accepted immediately, but something stopped him. He remembered Lily. He remembered how many nights he had promised her things would eventually become easier. He also remembered how his wife used to tell him that losing one door did not mean losing the whole house. So he accepted. The following weeks were difficult. Daniel had to learn a completely different corporate culture. At first, he felt like an outsider. He worried constantly that people would discover he was not as talented as Evelyn believed. But instead of judging him, his new team respected him. Daniel did not lead from behind a desk. He worked beside them. He listened when junior employees spoke. He remembered birthdays. He stayed late when someone needed help, but he also left on time when his daughter needed him. Slowly, something remarkable happened. The department that had been struggling for months began to improve. Daniel redesigned the workflow, eliminated unnecessary procedures, and created a system that saved the company thousands of hours. Within 6 months, his department became one of the strongest in Evelyn's company. Then Victoria discovered who had helped her biggest rival achieve it. Daniel's former CEO requested a private meeting. Victoria expected the man she had fired to be bitter. Instead, Daniel arrived calm and professional. She admitted that she had made a mistake. She had been so focused on numbers that she had forgotten the people creating them. She had lost one of her best employees because she treated his humanity as a weakness. Daniel could have humiliated her. He could have reminded her of the termination letter and the way she had dismissed his concerns. But he simply told her that everyone deserves the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. Victoria asked him why he was not angry. Daniel looked at her and explained that anger would not give him back those 7 years. But forgiveness could help him move forward. That conversation changed Victoria more than any business report ever had. Months later, Daniel received another unexpected surprise. Lily's medical procedure was successful. When she came home, she gave her father a handmade card with crooked letters written across the front. It said that he was the strongest dad in the world. Daniel sat beside her that evening, holding the card with tears in his eyes. He realized the greatest thing Evelyn had given him was not the salary, the position, or the signing bonus. She had given him something he had almost lost, the belief that his hard work still had value. If this story touched your heart, please support SoulTales by liking the video, sharing it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribing. Sometimes a person does not need someone to rescue them. Sometimes they simply need someone to recognize their worth when they have forgotten it themselves. And before we end, I want you to leave one special comment: kindness can change a life. Write those words if you believe that one act of kindness can open a door that rejection tried to close. Daniel never forgot the day he was fired. Not because it was the worst day of his life, but because it became the day he discovered that losing one opportunity could lead to a better one. The elevator doors had almost closed on him that morning, but someone had been standing behind him with another door already open. And sometimes, that is how life works. The door you are crying over today may not be the door you were meant to walk through. Sometimes, God allows one door to close because He knows there is another one waiting for you, one that leads somewhere you never imagined.